So I just saw the new Jim Cummings movie, The Wolf of Snow Hallow, and I loved it. Gotta watch out for Jim Cummings, because he's coming. Not like that. Well, maybe, but it's not what I meant.
I'm John, I'm an alcoholic. I've been in the program now for 6 years, sober for 3.
This is scary.
So The Wolf of Snow Hallow is from the director-writer Jim Cummings, who is fresh off of one of my favorite movies from 2018, Thunder Road. And Thunder Road is a great little independent, low-budget character drama. It's a really simple movie, written, directed, and starring Jim Cummings. And that's a movie about a slightly unhinged police officer whose life kind of spirals out of control. And it's one of those movies that is a performance-heavy movie. That's the best stuff in the movie. And it also does a really good job of having great-looking visuals. The cinematography is wonderful in it. There's a lot of long one-takes that really highlight how good of a performer Jim Cummings is, and there's some really funny, dark humor in it.
I saw that goddamn video! Who danced on a dude? In my culture, we do things that work! What?
So now we have The Wolf of Snow Hallow, which is a movie that's been out for a couple of weeks in my area, but I hadn't had time to get around to it. Honestly, I didn't even know it was out until a week ago. And I finally watched it, and I'm very upset at myself for not watching it as soon as it came out, because it's one of my favorites of this year. Now, that's not to say that it's the best movie of the year or that it's completely flawless, because it isn't. The movie is basically a werewolf movie. It's a movie about, again, Jim Cummings, who wrote and directed this one as well and stars in it, who is a police officer trying to hunt down a killer of a string of gruesome murders in a small town in Utah, which is where I live, and I love seeing the Park City locations in this, and there's even people in this that I know, which was kind of fun to see. I went, oh my god! I became Leonardo DiCaprio. I became that meme for a minute. But anyway, so again, this is just a simple police drama, but it throws in the little wrench of a werewolf being in it, which is a very fun little twist on this typical police drama story, police murder mystery.
If you're a werewolf and you probably come to feeling very ashamed, that's kind of what it's like falling off of the wagon. And so I wanted to pair the werewolf with the main character.
This is a movie that is very ambitious. There's a lot that it is trying to do, way more than in Thunder Road. Again, Thunder Road was incredibly simplistic, just one central performance and great cinematography and great writing, and it doesn't really try all that much outside of just a basic family drama. This one is doing a lot more than that. It's a police drama. There's tons of characters, there's tons of plot lines, there's tons of exposition, there's tons of things to follow. So it is a lot more ambitious, but because of that, there is a lot more room for error. And there is, I would say, more things that are wrong in this than there are in Thunder Road. However, the things that work really, really well, and the things that don't actually didn't affect my viewing that much. The biggest thing that I'll say about this movie, and what I say to people when I've been recommending it in the last week or so, is that it takes a minute to get its footing. The first act is a little slow, and you don't really meet the main character for a little bit. You don't really understand who he is for a little bit. For the first 10 minutes or so, it's following characters that, while they matter to the story, they're not the main characters. One of them even gets killed. So it takes a little bit to get going. I feel like you could trim out a little of the first act especially, and the tone isn't quite what it ends up being. The tone of the movie overall is a bleak, dark comedy, and it is hilarious. It's a hilarious movie, but for the first act, I didn't really get that sense. The first act of this movie feels very serious and very dark and bleak, which I didn't much care for. And again, as the movie goes along, that tone starts to stabilize into what the movie is. But again, the first act is, I would say, the weakest. There are a couple other things that I don't care for in this movie. One of them is a slasher movie problem, oddly enough, where characters just get introduced to get killed. That's the main function they serve. A character pops up you barely get any information about them, and then they get killed immediately. That happens 2 or 3 times in this, and I don't care for movies when they do that. I would like a movie to establish all our characters in the first act, and then make them central to the story. And unfortunately, this one has a few too many characters and a few too many moments where characters just get introduced to get killed. And it makes some of the impact of a death or a murder lessened because of that, because you don't know who they are. Whereas if you killed one of the characters that we do get to know, it would be more effective for the audience, I think. So I don't care for that. And also, this is a spoiler right out of the gate, but the werewolf turns out to be a dude, obviously. And I don't know if they were intending it to be a dude in a costume or an actual werewolf. And there's a shot near the end where the werewolf guy is standing and he's in costume, and it looks like there's a fold from the costume revealing that it is just a costume. And if that's the case, why were there monster noises in some of the death scenes? It's just a guy. Why was he making monster noises? Why was he howling like a wolf? Why was he having wolf mannerisms? Why was he able to tear people to shreds with his teeth, which would be a part of a costume? Why was he able to use superhuman strength to rip people's arms off? That doesn't quite make sense. Now, if it was a werewolf, if he's just a werewolf that turns into a werewolf on a full moon, then that's more believable in the context of the movie, but also it looks just like a costume, so that would be a problem on its own. So either way you cut it, it's kind of an issue for me, that werewolf in general.
Upon thinking and watching more behind the scenes of this movie, I'm convinced there are, in fact, 2 different werewolves in this movie. One that is actually a werewolf, and one that is a poser wannabe werewolf. Now, why you would have 2 werewolves in the same movie, I'm unsure about, but that seems to be the case. So do with that what you will.
I'm gonna have a hard time getting my generation off the stage. Willie Nelson's still doing concerts.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, Dad, Willie Nelson is a guitar player, and he's not doing a lot of heavy police work.
But that's it. That's the stuff I didn't like. And again, this movie is sub 90 minutes, so it flies by. It's compact, but there's a lot going on. And there's a ton to really appreciate here. Jim Cummings has really established himself as a wonderful writer and a pretty capable director and star. He's great in this. He's the main character, and he carries this movie on his performance. He is great in this movie, and his character, while not too different from Thunder Road, is absolutely wonderful. I loved this character because it feels like a fleshed out character that's dealing with his own issues. The movie never takes liberties with him. The character is this slightly unhinged, anger-prone alcoholic. And at any moment, the movie doubles down on that character trait, and that leads into his arc, which I loved about this. There are so many moments when it would be really easy to forget that, but Jim Cummings never does that, which I loved. He's constantly an anger-prone alcoholic, and anytime anything's even slightly inconvenient happens, it sets him off, and he goes berserk. And that's another thing that I think really works about this, is throughout the whole movie, he is dealing with so many issues, which is why he becomes more and more unhinged as it goes along. He's dealing with this monster who seems to be attacking specifically females, so he's trying to protect his daughter from that. And then his father is the sheriff of the town, so technically his boss, and he's dealing with heart issues, so he's dealing with that. And he's just dealing with all these issues that are surrounding him, and he's dealing with trying to be sober, not an alcoholic. And as more murders start happening, and as more distrust builds towards the police force in the movie, he slowly gets more unhinged. His temper gets worse, he starts drinking harder and harder and harder, and it all culminates in a wonderful climax near the end of the movie.
What was it?
Beer bottle.
Beer bottle? Who would want to throw a beer bottle at a cop car?
And that is the best stuff in this movie by far. The character stuff is amazing. There's a lot better performances in this as well. It's technically a studio movie. It was distributed by Orion, which glad to see Orion back. And there is legitimate actors in this that have been in bigger things that Jim Cummings actually directs pretty well. So he proves that he can act along good actors and direct them very well. And their performances are really good in this. And they bring a lot to this otherwise pretty low budget movie, which is another thing that I think people could have issue with, the low budget nature of it. Because the cinematography, while it's pretty good, has that low budget feel to it. The whole thing in general has a low budget feel. Some of the visual effects kind of do. But for me, it didn't bother me that much. Going into it, I knew what it was, so knowing that it's low budget and what they accomplished is really impressive to me. Excuse me. And yet, there still is more. The dark comedy in this is amazing. There is so much comedy in this that was completely unexpected. And that goes back to kind of what I mentioned earlier in the first act, where I didn't quite get the sense that it was a comedy. But as it goes along, there are hilarious moments in this. There are plenty of moments where Jim Cummings is just wonderfully over the top.
It's a wolf. Or maybe it's a werewolf.
No, let me just make this perfectly clear. There is no such thing as werewolves.
There's a lot of ambition into the actual filmmaking as well. Not only is the cinematography good, there's a lot of one-takes in this that are great. There's one where Jim Cummings is trying to get order in this crime scene, this murder that happens, and everybody's talking to him, and the news shows up, and he's trying not to give information to the news, and people are yelling, and he like slaps people. That's like one of his things. He just slaps everybody, which was hilarious to me. And that's a one shot, and it's wonderful. It puts you in the character shoes really well. But there's also a lot of ambitious transitions. There's a lot of really nice transitions from scene to scene, to where it made me feel like Jim Cummings thought about how every scene should be laid out, maybe other than the red herring cutaways, which sort of just happen. But there's a lot of attention to detail in this that I really appreciate, and that's maybe why I love it so much. It's just a movie that plays within its means. It doesn't go too far, and it doesn't do not enough. It's one of those movies that knows exactly what it is, and it does it to its best ability. It doesn't take this low budget and try to do too much with it to the point where it just falls apart, and it doesn't take this low budget and then just put it into stupid things that don't matter. Jim Cummings knows exactly what he's doing, and he made a really good movie on a low budget that managed to be more entertaining, more engaging, and more well-crafted than most movies I've seen this year. So if you haven't seen it, check it out. It's wonderful. I'd probably give it an 8 out of 10. I absolutely loved watching it. I had a blast. Other than that first act and a couple little things here and there, it's just a slam dunk, really. It's such a bizarre premise, but he just nails it. He just nails it. I love this guy. Anything he does, I'm there for. Maybe when he comes back to Sundance, I'll see him. But yeah, check it out. It's great. Buy it. Buy it.